Welcome to the Woodturning Workshop. Today we're going to be making a really neat project. Actually, 32 neat projects. We're going to make a chess set. Checkmate again? Stay tuned. Man, I never win at this game. Well, why make a chess set? Well, if I made a checker set, the show would be about a minute long. This is a great project, but you do really have to be prepared before you make it. The biggest thing is go out and buy your chessboard first. Or if you're better than me with flat wood, you can make your own. But by buying the board, then you know the size of the squares. There are some regulations, but you know, boards are all different sizes. And the first thing I did when I got my chessboard was I started to turn some little pieces, little round discs, to see what would look right and what would fit right on the board. That's why my king always winds up in chess, laying down. I lose a lot. But anyway, I found out that 1 3/8 inches was a perfect width for all of the royalty in the back row, and 1 1¼ inches, yeah, was right for all the pawns in the front row. Now, if you look closely at the pieces, I wanted continuity, so the bases on the pawns and all the royalty are the exact same design, but like I said, this one's smaller, this one's larger. The other thing too to keep in mind is that your pieces go up in height as you go. This is the Rook, castle Rook. I always want to call it castle. It's a Rook. That's your knight. We'll talk about that later. Here's your bishop and your queen and your king. So as you go up in rank, they also get a little bit taller. And if you're worried about the measurements, if you want to make this exact design, this exact set, we'll make available measured drawings, and there'll be more information at the end of the show on how you can get those. The tools we're going to be using today are a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, a 3/8 inch spindle gouge, a 3/8 inch parting tool, a 1/8 inch parting tool, a 1/16 inch parting tool, and 2 small handmade scrapers. Well, I don't normally wear a smock because it makes me look like a nerd or like I belong to a cult, but I have a little bit of a sensitivity to Cocobolo, and I don't want all those shavings going down my shirt, so this really helps in keeping the shavings out. Well, we're going to be approaching this a little bit differently than we have a lot of projects. All my blanks, I cut the length already. I took them to the bandsaw and actually cut the edges off, because with 32 pieces, you don't want to be roughing out that much stuff. I don't need that tool, I need this tool. But anyway, by taking the edges off, you have a lot less turning to do. Now, before I get started on the turning, the king and the queen are basically the same except for height, and I have a little bit of detail on the king, so I'm going to show you how to make the king, and once you know how to make the king, you know how to make the queen. So anyway, I'm taking my 3/8 inch parting tool, and that's how we're going to rough out the blank. It's a really nice tool for moving a lot of wood quickly. The only problem is the direction the shavings go. Right back at you, get into your shirt and mouth. Now I have a set of calipers set to the bottom diameter of the king, and I just want to bring this down to that diameter. There we go. That's 1 3/8 inches if I remember right. And now we're just going to part our way on down and remove the rest of the wood so we can start working on the other parts of the king. They need to make a smock for the mouth. Now, the technique for using this tool, don't talk while you're using it, but you have the tool and you're not pushing and lifting real hard. You're kind of letting it start cutting, and you're actually pushing inwards, and it rides down on the wood. Now, as I make these last couple of cuts, I've got to, I'm going to leave the wood a little bit higher. I hope my sensitivity doesn't involve ingesting this stuff. Anyway, see, it's not quite the diameter here. And I want to make the cut here, and I've left a little ledge, and that ledge comes in very handy because I'm going to bring up a storyboard. Now the storyboard is simply a drawing of the profile of the piece, and I have measurements here, you probably can't read my writing, of the specific high points and where it changes in height. And I left the ridge because now I can rub that against that back, and I can come up here and make my marks. Now it looks like I need to go back just a hair further for that to fit. There we go. Okay, now this is the top of my piece. This is the outer lip of the hat part of the king, and then this is where the hat ends, and here is the transition of the foot to the body, and then this is the base. Okay, now the next measurement I have to take, well actually I already took it, the next thing I have to do, this is the diameter of the top of the king. Now you're going to get a little vibration working on a piece like this because you don't have a tailstock, but that's okay. And when you're actually making the pawns, you can do 2 or 3 on one piece of wood. The wood can go out about here and the vibration won't be that bad, but I prefer to do them all one at a time. It's a little bit easier to do it that way. Now I want to come down just a little bit further. It's a little faster cut when you're using both hands because you can apply a little bit more pressure. Now this is the transition of the foot to the body. So I have that diameter on a pair of calipers, and I'm going to cut just on top of that transition. So in other words, there's the diameter for the top of the foot, this diameter right here, but I cut it to this side right there, and that's going to be very important in a minute. Now we've got that done, let's remark our piece, and I want to mark the cap, and again there's our top, and there's that next transition. Now we have to move the tool rest, so I'm going to turn the lathe off. Now if you were doing any other piece other than the rook and the king, you would be working on the side, and you want to move your tool rest because right now my angle of attack, I have to have the handle almost straight, almost horizontal there. That's not good. The other thing is you have too much overhang. So by bringing the tool rest in, you give yourself that angle of attack back that you need when you're starting to turn a spindle. But in our case, we actually have to turn the end of the king first because we have to make this ball. And if you screw up on the ball and you've already turned this part of the king, you got nowhere to go. So we're going to take our small 3/8 inch spindle gouge with a fingernail grind, and we're going to start working our way in to make that ball. So first off, we just want to start parting the wood in, like so, and we're leaving kind of a nub on here. Now if you notice, my tool rest is a little bit below center so I can attack it this way. And I'm using my fingers as a backstop as I start this cut. And you just push in as you go. There we go. Now with this nub, if I came in here and started turning this way, I'd be going downhill on the grain because all the grain of the wood is coming this way. I need to actually come up here and start turning this direction to make the ball on top of the king. So I just keep rolling and following through and rolling and following through. Now right here on this little nib, don't push your way through, just nibble it off. If your tool's a little bit dull and you push straight across real hard, you'll tear out the grain. You'll spend forever trying to sand that out. Now, this is flat right now. We want to angle it in. So I'm going to come back in, use my fingers again as a backstop, and push in and cut. And one more time. Okay, now it's angled in, but I've got to continue the shape of the ball on the cap here, of the king, the crown, excuse me. So I'm actually going to pull, and I'm using a pull cut to blend in those two edges of the wood, and now I've got the crown finished and I can start working on the rest of the king. Turn the lathe off. We're going to switch tools. I'm going to go to my 1/2-inch spindle gouge. Now it has a regular grind on it, just a good old flat straight grind. And the reason I like that is because it helps me with gentle curves with that bigger edge. I want to start just roughing out the top part of the king right now. And as I do this, I'm going to work my way back towards the head or the crown of the king so I can start making this angle design. But I just want to remove some of this extra wood out of the way too, so it's just not bothering me. Okay, now with this tool, I'm just making contact and I'm rotating my body to make the cuts. And when I do it real fast, it's kind of hard to see as I'm going, but it's a technique. Okay, so I'm going to look at that angle and start shaping the top of the crown now. Now I'm making contact. There we go, just going to push in. And in my head, I'm keeping that angle. See, I need to make it a little bit steeper. But I'm just coming into that edge very gently, taking a very light cut, running the bevel against the wood. See how it burnishes the wood? Now I want to bring back my storyboard real quick. And come here and let's see, there's that. So I need to make a parting cut about right here. So I'm going to get my parting tool and I have my caliper set to the diameter I need. So I'm going to come in here, waste a little wood. Okay, we're getting close. There we go. Now I want to come back and make one sliver of a cut right here and clean up the underside of that edge. Because sometimes when you're parting out, it'll tear the wood. Not on Cocobolo too often, it's really nice. But by coming back and just barely taking any wood off, you clean up any torn fibers. Okay, so we have that transition. Now I need to come down here and I want to start shaping the bottom of the king. And after making about 30 of these, I got the swinging movement down for it. And what I want to do is stay just short of this line, which is the end line. And I want to bring this down to where it is flush with that line right there. And once that line goes away, I know I'm there. Okay, now we have the base. Let's go back now. Redraw that line back on. And now I'm going to start working on this. I'm going to come back with the parting tool. And I need to make my relief cut, or edge actually, for the transition of the base to the body. And then I'm taking a very fine cut, so that's a nice clean edge. Touch that right there. Now I want to start cutting and swinging my way down to put in that gentle curve. Be careful right here that you're not pushing hard. If you push too hard, you'll run through and hit your piece. And this is just like doing a bead, except in reverse. We want to take it a little bit at a time. Now the other thing is I'm doing this right-handed, and it's not going to be very easy to keep making this cut as I get closer to the head of the piece. And look at how I'm trying to bend this way. I run into the headstock, and I just can't finish the cut. So left-handed is not bad. You just switch it. I'm putting the handle into my stomach right here. And the fact that I need to lose a few pounds actually helps me in this case. I'm going to start running the bevel. And as it cuts, I swing my body. And it's my body moving the tool right now, not my hands. And then I'm letting it just run right along on the bevel. And now you can see I can go all the way to the end and I have nothing blocking me. It really is a helpful thing to be ambidextrous. And if you're not, don't worry about it. I'm not either. And it just takes a little bit of practice and time to where you can do this. Now I've blended the whole piece together so it's not one nice long piece, and it's really hard to see on here, but actually this comes in, steps down, goes in, comes down and goes in again and makes a notch. So I'm going to make that notch with my 1/16 inch parting tool, and I'm just going to do it by eye. There's no measurements involved. Just part it down, and there we have that little decorative spot there. So the last thing I have to do is start working on the base. Well, now the base is a little bit tricky because I'm cheap. I didn't want to waste too much wood. And when you're working close to the jaws of a chuck like this, you have to be careful. So I'm going to part in, and then part in again. And that pencil line is where the curve or the transition of my piece is. I'm going to go back to my small spindle gouge. I'm just going to roll that over. Just barely make that shape. Now come over here and cut in. What I want is I want a lip on the bottom of the piece that makes it look like the piece is rising up off the wood. Now, I'm just going to come in and push in with a tool and do a pull cut to make that transition right there. Because when we sand the bottom later, we're going to lose some of the bottom, and it'll finish up the bottom. It'll still rise up, but I'm going to leave a little extra there because I will be sanded away. Now, a little bit of sanding, we're going to put a finish on our king. Now I'm buffing off a second coat of a 2-wax finish system. I'm using wax on the Cocobolo because it has such a high oil content. It's a lot of trouble to get the oil out of there so you can then put on a polyurethane or something like that. But look how gorgeous that Cocobolo is when it buffs up. And now I just need to part it off. I'm going to bring the tool rest up. Don't touch the jaws. Spins well. Start it up. Grab my parting tool. And I want to lower the speed. I had the speed up really high for doing the wax. So we'll just come in here and start making some cuts. Now you might think I'm crazy using an 850-pound lathe to make chess pieces. Well, when it comes to lathes, there are a lot of choices. Well, Paul, what size lathe should I buy is something I hear all the time.
I hear that all the time from our customers wanting to get into turning.
Right, and it comes down to really three things. How much do you want to spend on a lathe, what size your shop is, and the size projects you want to make, right?
That's correct.
And you have in front of you?
This is a mini lathe. It's a great place to get started. It's a little bit smaller, so you can fit it in a lot of different places on a bench top. But it's also a great lathe to start with. You can get into a lot of different projects with it. Don't let that name, mini, scare you.
Right, you're not limited, right?
No, you're doing a 10-inch bowl,
yeah,
a vase. You have plenty of room to do a good-sized spindle for many different projects.
That's pretty neat. And then the obvious step up would be to get into a lathe that is mid-size. And this is a bigger lathe. It has all the same things you find on the small lathe. You have a tailstock, you have a banjo and tool rest, and you have a headstock. But the thing you need to know is some measurements. The most important one is the distance from the spindle down to the bed, and that's the swing of the lathe. This is a 14-inch swing, 7 inches times 7 inches, so you can make something 14 inches wide. The other thing you have to know is
the distance between the centers here.
Right, because
what size of work you want to do on a spindle work.
Now you can make a baseball bat on this lathe. That way, the way that lathe is set up, you can't make a baseball bat on, obviously. And you can even go on up to professional lathes, which cost several $1,000s like I have. And if you look at mine, mine's actually short. I had to pick a short footprint because of the size of my shop. So again, it all boils down to three things. How much do you want to spend, how big your shop is, and what size project you want to make. Now I'm just finishing up shaping the bishop, and you can see it's like a little onion dome, maybe a teardrop shape, and I'm working my way in here because I need to make a little tiny bead right here. So I'm using my little spindle gouge and I'm just making a cut in, so then I'll just blend into that. So I've made the bottom part of my bead, now I make the top part of my bead. And if you're worried about getting a catch here, you can come in this way and push in. And now, on the first bishop I made, I had a little tear out in the grain on the end, so it actually turned into a design modification, which worked out really nicely. Let me move my tool rest here. And I don't want to bore you with all this, but I took a dental tool and ground it into a scraper. So I want to come in here, and it's about right, just a touch higher, just a touch higher. Okay, that should work. I'll lock that down, start it back up, and I'm going to take the dental tool as a scraper and just push in. And this is how I got rid of the torn grain on the end of that piece. And I liked it so much, that's why I used it on all the other pieces. Now you know how to make the rest of this piece because I showed you on the king how to make the base and the body. So all I have left to do on this one is sanding. And this is canary wood, so it doesn't have a high oil content, so I'm going to finish it with polyurethane. Now I've been hand sanding these down to 400 grit. You can go finer if you wish. Now while this is on the lathe, I'm going to actually put on a coat of polyurethane. It's almost like a sanding sealer, but I'm going to pick the speed of the lathe up a little bit and just dry that off. So now I've sealed the wood, and then after I part this off, I can put a couple more coats on it by hand and then buff it to a nice shine. But this is canary wood, and it has a really cool grain pattern to it, but it's still light enough to be the white chess pieces. Now onto the next piece. Now I'm roughing out the knight for you, and that one gave me a lot of fits trying to design it, and I wound up actually taking my inspiration from the pawn. So the knight and the pawn are exactly the same, it's just a different size. And so I'll show you how to make the knight. Now, this does not look like a horse head. This is not the wood carving workshop, it's a wood turning workshop. So I had to come up with my own design that we could turn. I wanted to make this entirely on the lathe. So anyway, I'm going to switch from my big spindle gouge now to my small spindle gouge to start shaping the top of the knight. Now this is a fairly sharp angle I want to make, but it is a bead still, so we're going to sneak up on it. And this line is the outer diameter, or the biggest edge of the top. I'm going to ride that on in, okay? That's almost the way I want it. I'm using my thumb as a backstop, so in case I get a catch, it won't go too far. Now I'm going to increase this, I'm going to make it a little bit sharper. Come in, and remember, you get to that tip, nibble it off so you don't tear any fibers out on the end grain. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we're going to come back here, and this is just a straight cut across line. I just need to meet it up with the parting tool design. Same thing, I'm using my fingers as a backstop, so if I get a catch, it's not going to run very far. And so I just want a nice, clean, sharp edge. Come in, and I don't know if you can see that, but I'm actually coming in and meeting up right there where I had a parting tool. And I'm going to grab the parting tool real quick and just clean up the transition between that for a little shoulder. And now just finish this out, and we're on to the next piece. Well, now we're ready to make the rook. Looks like a castle to me. Anyway, that's our last piece, and we're going to do some hollowing on the end. I've already turned it down roughly, but I left some extra wood there because I need that, because when you hollow, you get a little bit more vibration. So we're going to start with our fingernail grind spindle gouge and just dish out the center here. Now we're using the spindle gouge to hollow out the center because that'll give us a nice starting point for our scraper. Oh, there's a big mistake. I got my tool cut. Let me come back. You can always fix problems like that. There we go. I exposed the top edge of my tool and then hit the wood and it chased it back. But hey, design modifications, that's what turning is all about. There we go. Now I need to stop the lathe. I'm going to raise the tool rest up so my homemade scraper here is just slightly above center. That looks good right there. Lock that in, and we just come in and we start scraping it out. And you want to make nice, clean cuts because you really can't sand in here. There we go. Clean up that tip just by raising up. You raise up and it goes away. There we go. Now the body on this is the exact same as all the other pieces. So I'll go ahead and turn that, sand that, and then we're done with all the turning. Now, I have a piece of MDF board that I cut into a circle. It's mounted on a faceplate, and then I use spray adhesive to hold some 150 grit sandpaper on there, and I'm just cleaning up the bottoms of the pieces. And once I have those cleaned up, I'll apply a little bit of finish to each one, and they'll be ready to go. Now the white pieces of canary wood is going to wind up being buffed on a wheel, but as you can tell from the Cocobolo, it's already finished. Well, here we have our completed chest set, and it's well worth the effort. It'll probably take you 2 days to make, but you're going to wind up with an heirloom quality project. Now, I could have been traditional and used ebony and holly for the woods, but you know, once you polish those woods up, you don't have a lot of wood grain showing. It kind of looks like plastic, and I wanted to enjoy the look of wood, so that's why I went with Cocobolo and Canary Wood. They have striking grain patterns in them. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's project. I know I did. So until the next time on the Woodturning Workshop, keep turning. And you know, I think it's time for a rematch. I don't get it. Where'd you learn to play chess? It's that obedience class, isn't it? They're teaching you things, huh? Or are you getting on the internet when I'm gone? That's it. Yeah. No more computer time for you. How about best 2 out of 3? You ready? You want to go again? Yeah? You do? I do. Okay. Here's a pawn. Yeah, have that.
To purchase a DVD copy of this program, please call 800-823-7210. For more information about Woodturning Workshop, visit our website, rsupublictv.org.
This week on the Woodturning Workshop, we're going to make a pretty neat project. Actually, 32 neat projects. A chess set. Checkmate again? Taking a very light cut, running the bevel against the wood. I'm going to pick the speed of the lathe up a little bit and just dry that off. You know, it's bad enough when you beat me at checkers. Now at chess, no more internet privileges for you, buddy. I know where you're learning this stuff.